know that most of you have probably a long range of Zoom and Skypes throughout the week, so I'll try to make this interactive. And if you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead. And before we actually dive in, I would like you to have a quick look at those two pictures, and with any association that comes to your mind, unmute yourself and just shoot. What do you see in terms of similarities between those two? Yes. Hello. What do they have in common? I know it's Monday morning, but still. But they both need nutrients, for example. They both need sunlight. They both need water. They both need attention. But there is something else that human beings and plants have in common. We tend to focus on their outside, and we do not look at the roots. We see if a face is smiling, if a person appears to be in good health. We see when the petals are nice and colorful, but we do not see what's the reason when all of a sudden the smile is gone and when the petals are falling. And that's where POZE starts, at the roots of our happiness, which are also the roots of our unhappiness. POZE is based on the understanding that human existence is the result of 4 dimensions: aspirations, emotions, thoughts, and sensations. Now, if you look at the human being, the classic example of the iceberg, we find that our sensations, our physiological experience of the world, is that what we see, what we can touch. It's the face, it's the petals, it's what's above the earth. Then come the thoughts, the minds, which are just underneath the surface and which determine how we experience what surrounds us. But there's more, the emotions. And the tip of the iceberg, which is just buried completely at the bottom, is our aspirations. That's what drives us. That's what motivates us. Now, if we apply that to the traditional pyramid of Maslow, which most of you are probably familiar with, we see that the bottom, the socle that we spend so much time and energy on, that sensation part that we can see above the earth, takes up the biggest chunk. But actually, the top is that what matters. What matters most if we think about the roots. So it's upside down, the whole logic. And that's sadly also how we tend to live our lives. We look at the socle, but we don't look at the roots underneath. So the outside that swallows most of our energy is that small bit, but actually it's all determined by the inside. And that's why there is a spiral dynamic. The two influence each other. Whatever happens in one realm, it impacts the other. Sorry. I can't hear. Sorry. Okay. So the two stand in mutual influence, one impacting the other. If we apply that now on a spiral dynamic, we see that one is part of the other. So actually, that artificial distinction that we tend to separate our lives in, with aspirations on one end, and then the emotional part, and the mental side, and the physiological side, does not really hold, because one is part of the other. That means if we want to bring about sustainable quality of life, we cannot look at this like a shopping list, but we must conceive it like a holistic entirety, whereby all pieces of the game must be addressed to have a whole that works. Now, the interesting thing is that those 4 dimensions of our individual existence are symmetrical to the 4 dimensions of our collective experience. The individual is the center of the community, be it a family, a sports club, a school, a corporation. And individuals and communities together make up society. And all of this, together with nature, makes up the planet, the world. So taken like this, which is really simplified, but all of a sudden, making the world a better place becomes something very tangible, because it starts with the aspiration of the individual. So what is POZE? It's based on 4 principles: purpose, identifying our aspiration, so the core of the center, if you like, the universal word for emotions, and which comes down to working with our emotions instead of considering ourselves as the victims of it. Zoom, training our thoughts instead of considering them as something that just happens, to start to find an entry point and discipline them, and experience, to consider everything that happens in our life as an opportunity to learn. Why? Change starts from the inside out. So our aspirations, that why of our being, influences how we feel, how we think, and how we experience our environment, which then influences what we do and shapes our experiences in turn. Nothing happens in a vacuum. When you think about that spiral dynamic, what happens inside has repercussions outside, and vice versa. Because change can be nurtured from the outside in. We can start by changing our behavior, even if we don't have aligned our emotions yet. Because our experiences influence what we do, remember, and repeat. And so repeated behavior eventually shapes how we think, how we feel, and who we become. And that's actually not just something that sounds nice philosophically speaking, but it's something that is proven by neuroscience, that whatever behavior you repeat, it's something that leaves a pathway in your brain. Like a skier who comes down the hill the first time, the pristine hill is open to all kinds of tracks, but the second time, it's already a little bit more sure that the same track will be taken, the third time even more, and so it goes. So the brain changes throughout our lives based on the action that we take. There's a fascinating book by Norman Deutsch, if any of you is interested, really, really good. So whatever we do shapes who we are and who we become. So nothing is graved in stone. POZE is based on a multidisciplinary underpinning, from psychology over to neuroscience, to economics, to behavioral insights, social development. I don't know if any of you had chance to look at the 2 books that just came out, but it's really a similar attempt like all of the research in quality of life to draw on as many possible disciplines to show that it's not one science preaching something, but that it's drawing on the best of what's available right now to come up with something that resonates with a maximum of scientists, and of people. So POZE, which by the way means inner peace in Haitian Creole, where I started it initially, is based on 4 questions. Why are you here? Who are you? Where do you stand in your life? And what do you need to do to align your aspirations and your actions? Because everything is connected. And in a way, one can boil it down very simply to the vision that we have of our future is our future. As long as we can't see it inside, it's not going to happen outside. So how? And I will shortly talk about a program that we did in Haiti in 2017 to 2018 and show you a quick video. We looked at the fact that many social agents work with traumatized adolescents in very high risk areas. And we wanted to help those social agents to help the adolescents better. Because what we found is that many of those who work with adolescents at risk were at risk themselves. So there was one woman, for example, she was working every single day with girls who were raped, who experienced sexual violence. And as it turned out during the workshops, she had been raped as a girl, but she never had the privilege of serious psychological treatment. So what we did during that program is to give these social agents the tools to, first of all, help themselves, to then help the adolescents they were working with better. And I will show you a short video.
Chaque famille va rencontrer avec les toujours le sentiment qui en parle, c'est ça m'a côté comme on va aller ajouter. Si nous pas fait un bagage, nous sommes capables de des enfants qui la guerre dans les camps juvéniles. On a même grandi, c'est toujours comme si vous étiez pour être mec avec nous, qui est capable de respecter accompagner l'autre dans sa vie. Avant, c'est soit comme on disait qui est enseigné, qui pas pour lui. Moi, les citoyens ont confiance, parce que cela, c'est complètement. On est sur le pouvoir, qui est et avec ça, on va faire certaines fois, il parlait avec vous de la même, mais il va parler avec famille. À ce moment, pour mon capacité, pour capable d'accompagner. Mon cicatrice, c'est là, nous coincés, nous fermés, nous pas développer. C'était un jour matin, quand je me couché avec moi. Et puis, il y a un peu comme qui me dit que papa mourit. Il était dit, il ne mourit pas qu'à lui. Le papa me là, je me fermé. C'est lui-même qui t'a bien. Et dans le puis, on a travaillé. Je m'ai dit, là, on va pour les brillants, là où elle belle là, c'est pas comme ça, des fois elle est belle. Le pas c'est l'identifier en pile, c'est la sa ville plus belle. C'est une formation que M. Léonard est vraiment c'est un client épais pour combattre avec n'importe ça qui privé dans la vie.
Moi, c'est pas comprendre que les autres sont capables de là-bas, de lancer. C'est un même qui faut faire un travail sur le terrain. Et si on vraiment travaille sur le terrain, on comprend que l'on fait violence sur le monde, on fait sur le terrain. Transformation locale à partir de formation ça, peut-être qu'on va pas sur le sur Haïti. On va parler le monde.
So basically, our ambition was to build up a gradually growing pool of like-minded people. To start with a small core of agents of change, and from there build an alliance of the willing, a network of the like-minded, and draw in ever more supporters. Because our ambition was to start small and scale up, and that worked. So it's difficult to see right now to which extent this will be brought to scale further up, because some of you may have followed the political situation that is going on right now in Haiti and which comes on top of the pandemic. But it is something that can work anywhere, be it in Haiti, be it in the US, be it in Europe or in Asia. That's, I think, one of the most important parts of POZE, that it's not a blueprint, that it's something which is based on some principles that are common to human nature throughout the world, no matter where we come from and which culture we have grown up in, but then it works with the local community to develop a program that works and that resonates. And that makes it very different from the traditional approach to many development and humanitarian programs. So, when we now shortly look how this applies to the COVID conundrum, and I'm very happy to discuss that if you have a different opinion, but it seems very clearly that COVID is not the problem in itself, but it has pulled the curtain of a systemic social paradox that has always existed. Inequality, discrimination, climate change, these big words that have stood in the room for quite a long time, they are not new. They didn't appear in 2020. But COVID has put the spotlight on them and has forced us to look. So if we want to seize this opportunity, and COVID could be one, to change the quality of life in the city that we live in and the world that we live in, then we could seize that momentum for short, medium, and long-term changes. But that requires a shift in perspective, which comes back to the fact that everything starts inside. With that purpose, that why are we here? And that's all from my side. Any questions that you might have, I'm very happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Cornelia. That was a wonderful presentation, and honestly, truly a unique perspective on world humanitarian relief, because I think just mostly we think about the very first initial needs that individuals might have in affected countries, like as we talk about the hierarchy of needs. We provide food, shelter, clothing, initially, but I haven't heard of anyone present on providing beyond those needs. So that was really a fascinating presentation, and I'm sure very effective. We did have one question from someone. You had mentioned a book. This was from Ramona. You had mentioned a book, and she said, what was the title of the book you recommended?
Actually, thank you, Ramona. Actually, there are two books. One is, and Jill, maybe you want to share the links after the, so basically there are two. One is development, humanitarian action and social welfare. And the second one, which has just come out, is humanitarian aid, social change, and human behavior. And there's a third one which comes out in fall, which is Corona Connection in Times of COVID. And they are all with Palgrave, so you can get them either on Amazon or on the Palgrave website.
Sure, if you could send me the links, Cornelia, I'll be happy to share that with everyone in our follow-up email.
Okay.
There's another question from Nuno, and Nuno, feel free to unmute yourself and show your video if you'd like to ask your question directly. Otherwise, I can ask it for you. And find where he is.
Hello.
There he is. Go ahead and unmute yourself because we can't hear you, Nuno.
Sorry. The button was switched off. Thank you for your presentation, Cornelia. I was thinking about, I enjoy very much your presentation, of course. I was wondering, in your inside-out process that you talk, what is the importance? How can we put in real place the institutions? I don't know if the example of IT could be a good example, but in this inside-out process that you talk, what do you think about the importance of institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Nuno. It's, in a way, institutions and individuals are very symmetrical to each other. So if you think about personal change, it starts with the aspiration, that why, but also just if you look at your everyday life, the attitude with which you approach something significantly impacts how you approach that. Supposing you are going into a presentation and you think you are awful at doing presentations, but most likely your whole physiological setup will be stressed and cramped up just going in there. So your performance will be much lower, right? And now if we apply this very basic personal logic to the individual, well, every institution is made up of individuals. So if we make that distinction between, well, should we start with institutional change, starting with changing processes and regulations and programs and all that, or should we start with stuff? Well, it's kind of the chicken and the egg question, right? Because institutions are made up of people, and people are shaped by the institutional climate that they evolve in.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from anyone remaining? Feel free to either type it into the chat bar or unmute yourself and show your video. While we're waiting, Cornelia, I'm wondering if you could speak to just your experience with UNICEF. And I know you spent some time in Haiti and in West Africa, is that right? In Afghanistan?
Yes, basically I was the past 18 years, actually, I was with UNICEF and the World Food Program. So 4 years in Haiti, before that 4 years in DR Congo, before that 2 years in Afghanistan, before that in the border area to Darfur, so Chad, and before that in Mali.
And was it your time in Haiti where this whole concept started to develop?
Yes, basically somehow POZE has grown organically, if you like, because I did my PhD about children's rights and that big gap between theory and practice while I was working in DR Congo. And it just struck me that on paper, everything is perfect. Like all countries but the US have signed the Convention of the Right of the Child, right? But then you look at the reality that these children go through, you think, wait a second. This is not what is written on paper. This is not what the country has committed to. And so basically, I did my whole PhD on is there an obligation, and did that obligation exist before all the legislation that has entered place? And there is, but that then left me with a much bigger question. Well, if telling people what they have to do doesn't work, how can we get them to want to do it? And so basically from that moment on, I developed POZE, which then started to be implemented while I was in Haiti, and which is based on the understanding, and again, that is proven by science, that in the moment where you have four inner layers, the four layers of your being, once they are in sync, wanting to do something for others, including protecting the most vulnerable, becomes natural. It's something that naturally comes from the inside, in the same way in which you want the new iPhone. So it's somehow, yeah, it's organically growing.
And are people still in Haiti facilitating some of the skills that they've learned through POZE? What's the continuation of this in those areas where you work?
Yeah. So those who participated in the first cohort, we did an external audit or an external assessment, if you like, 6 months later, looking at the participants, looking at the peers, and looking at the participants, so the adolescents, who were in the end our prime target, if you like. And the feedback was hugely positive. And even now, those social agents keep on applying what they have learned, because it's not an abstract knowledge that they have acquired in a conference room and then everybody's excited and then the door closes and people switch back to their usual operating modus, but it's something that has become part of who they are. It's not something where you have that intellectual, oh yeah, I get that. But it's something that has shaped and reshaped how they perceive themselves and thereby how they perceive their work in their environment.
Well, I think that's fascinating, and thank you so much for your detailed explanation on that. Did anyone else, this is a last opportunity for questions. Anyone else has a question or comment? In a couple of seconds. Otherwise, again, thank you so much, Cornelia, for the wonderful presentation. We'll be sending this out on a YouTube link, as well as if you could send any of your links for the books that you were recommending, as well as the website that you're working on regarding POZE, so we can continue to keep everyone updated on the progress there. With that being said, thank you again. And for those of you who are not members with ISOQLS, we encourage you to join us. If you are interested yourself in presenting your research in a webinar presentation like this one, just reach out to us at office@isqls.org and let us know. And in addition to that, we're also having a lot of events, online virtual events for our conference coming up in August of this year. So please stay tuned. And thank you all. Thank you, Cornelia, for your wonderful presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jill. And thank you everybody for joining.
Wonderful. Everyone have a great rest of your day. Thank you.